Matthew Lenton from Kitmaker Network, and today we're going to look at this Sparmax Max-4 airbrush, which is provided for us to review by the Airbrush company, limited in the UK, and it retails for £45. Now this airbrush has a 0.4mm nozzle, which is ideal for spraying heavier paints, but note that there's also what I think is a virtually identical Max-3 version that has a 0.3mm nozzle, and of course many model makers may be interested in that smaller nozzle size. Let's start by unpacking the box. So you can see the whole thing comes in a decent quality plastic case. Starting with the airbrush itself, you can see it's a gravity feed airbrush, large paint cup, comes with a well-fitting lid, and you can also see that there's a preset adjuster handle on the end here. Now this is a dual action airbrush, so you can see the trigger goes down for air, back for paint. As I said, you can adjust how far the trigger goes back on this dial here. Now also in the box, however, is this, which is a single action adapter. Now that quite simply just screws onto the end of the airbrush and turns it into a single action airbrush. You can see the trigger now only pulls back, not up and down, again adjustable with this. So also in the case is a crown cap. See, this is an end cap with gaps essentially cut into it. This is to prevent you from spidering on your wet paint if you're holding the brush up very close to the surface that you're painting, while also still protecting the needle from damage. We've also got a wrench for removing the needle. And then under here we've also got a cleaning brush and a set of instructions. So I'll demonstrate using this brush in both single and dual action modes. First cover larger areas with some Tamiya acrylic paint, and then some finer, more controlled painting with some Vallejo Model Air. Now note that some of the painting sequences have been shortened by speeding up the video, but I've indicated where that happens. I'll also show the brush being cleaned. I'm going to use some Vallejo airbrush cleaner and some airbrush brushes such as these, as well as cleaning off the nozzle during use. And although I'm only using acrylic paints for this, the specs say that the airbrush uses internal replaceable PTFE needle packing, so it's apparently safe to use with solvent-based paints as well. So rather than just seeing the airbrush painting on paper, let's have a look at painting an actual model. We'll use this white elephant, and we'll start off by using the single action valve. So screw that into the bottom of the airbrush. And as I mentioned earlier, you can see straight away the trigger can't be pushed down anymore, can only be pulled back. And because we're going to do some broad painting, we'll have the paint adjuster screwed out quite some way. So I'll attach the hose, put on a paint mask, and off we go. Now one of the things you'll notice when you've got the air running through with the single action valve in is that there's some air coming through the nozzle the whole time, so the compressor in this case, the Sparmax compressor we're using, is running continually. So while I suppose everybody has their own cleaning routine, I'll just go through what I normally do, and I think you'll see that this is a pretty conventional and easy to clean airbrush. So start off by taking the paint cup cap off. I'm going to give it a bit of water into the cup for a preliminary rinse round. Get a brush in to brush all around the cup, and then we'll spray that off into a cleaning jar with the air on. And then with tissue and some thinners, we'll give a wipe round. And then I'm going to put a bit of airbrush cleaner through the nozzle. Finger over the end, bubble a bit through. And then into the cleaning jar again. So if you were just changing colours of the same type of paint in the same paint session, another quick rinse round with water might be enough. But to clean it properly, of course, you need to strip it down. So let's have a look at how that works. So take the airbrush off the hose. Now, to make sure I don't lose anything, use a plastic tub. Start off by taking the handle off, so that we can undo the nut here and withdraw the needle carefully. And just put the needle straight into the tub. There's some airbrush cleaner in the bottom, so it's already being soaked in it. And then we can turn to the other end. Take the end cap off, dump that straight into the tub with the cleaner, and now the nozzle cap, also straight in. Now the instructions say don't remove the nozzle unless you're replacing it. Now I do actually take it off and clean it, because I find that inside the nozzle is the place where you're most likely to get small bits of paint collecting and possibly jamming it next time you want to use it. So notice I've got the nozzle not done up too tightly. I can just undo it with my fingers, just unscrew it, put that straight in as well, let that soak for a bit in the thinner. Sometimes I actually store these parts in the tub of thinner with a lid on to prevent the cleaner from evaporating, and I find that absolutely guarantees the next time you assemble it and put it back together again, it's all going to be lubed up and ready and won't have any paint gummed up in it. Now, of course, to give it a really thorough cleaning, you might not do this every time you use it, but you can use a airbrush cleaning brush, a bit like this kind of thing. Put a bit of airbrush cleaner on the end, and then carefully clean out the tube inside. We can see we've got some more paint out of it that way. Now the needle, give it a wipe down. Put it back in there until we're ready to actually reassemble it. And then inside the end cap is often a place where you get quite a lot of paint collected up. So again, we can use one of the brushes, a bit of cleaner on it, around the inside. And again with the nozzle cap, give that a clean round too. So to reassemble, I want to start off with the nozzle, of course, back on the end. Again, not too tight, no need for the wrench, just do it up with your fingernails. And then we want the nozzle cap next. And then the end cap. Important not to put the needle in first because the needle's going to poke through the end, obviously, and you don't want to have any risk of bending the end of it. So you want to make sure it's protected at all times. And then the needle nice and wet from the thinners, from the cleaner rather. Gently back in. Do up the nut. Again, not too tight. And then reassemble the handle. And there we go, ready to be reused or to be stored. So as we saw, the single action airbrush, the trigger only pulls back, you can't press it down, so all you're doing is allowing paint through and air's flowing all the time anyway. The way the paint flow is controlled is by this screw regulator on the end, so out, more paint going through, because you can pull the trigger further back. Screwed in, the trigger only moves a little. So it's really like a very high quality aerosol cannon that all you're really doing is turning the paint on and off. Now to convert it to a dual action airbrush, it's perfectly simple. There are actually instructions on how to do it, but it's just a question of changing the valves over actually. So we just unscrew the single action valve and screw in the dual action valve. Now something I've noticed is because of the fact that you screw the hose onto the end, there's a bit of a tendency for this to be done up very, very tight, so make sure you don't over tighten it, as it can be quite difficult to get off otherwise. As soon as that's on, you can see that now the trigger also goes up and down, as well as if we adjust this back out, as well as back and forth. So you're now controlling air and then paint. So when we base coated our elephant just now, we used some of this Tamiya dark yellow, probably one of the easiest paints to put through an airbrush. Now we're going to try something that's often a little more problematic, is some of this Vallejo Model Air. Now I'm going to try mixing it straight in the cup. So I'm going to put about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 drops of that in. And then I'm going to use some of this Liquitex retarder. We want about 25%, so I'm going to put in about 4 drops, hopefully. And then thin the paint a little more. I'm going to give it some airbrush thinner, about 3 drops. Okay, so to mix this up, I'm actually going to bubble some air through. And then we get some paint coming through. So the airbrush feels quite nice and heavy in the hand. A bit of weight helps overcome any drag from the line, makes it easy to handle in a way. Nice big paint cup. Trigger feels firm and precise, doesn't slop around at all, and all the screw threads and parts of the airbrush itself seem quite well made. Now, I think you could see that the base coats that we applied went on perfectly evenly, with the paint well atomised, no spattering. And the camouflage stripes, I hope, demonstrated that it can provide quite a fine spray. Now, with the Jagdpanther stripes, I tried to get the thinnest line I could get, and I think you can see that while certainly thicker than could be achieved using a 0.2mm nozzle, it's actually not that bad. So with the combination of the preset handle, the dual action valve and the single action valve, it gives you a lot of scope for control of this airbrush. And whether you want to have all the control at your fingertip on the trigger, or if you want to preset everything before you pull the trigger, this brush allows you to do both. So what don't you get? Well, if you must have a 0.2mm nozzle, then obviously neither this nor the Max-4 is for you. And note that it only comes with a 2-year guarantee, while some of the competition offer 5 or 10 years. Otherwise, I can't really think of any other downsides to the brush, and the painting went well as I hoped the video showed. Painting with an airbrush takes some care in terms of setting up the paints and materials and maintaining and cleaning the airbrush, but I found this Sparmax Max-4 to be perfectly easy to use, and it gave good results with no problems. Thanks to the airbrush company in the UK for providing the sample.